Yeah, the joint service in November meant to acknowledge and lament the Episcopal Church's complicity in the transatlantic slave trade. And from that service, we have now created a council of some of our lay people to work with the clergy. We're working on restoring the grave of Thaddeus Saltus, who was the first African-American ordained priest in the Episcopal Church, who was buried on Upper King Street on the peninsula. And then we decided that we wanted to take a pilgrimage together, and knowing that we were approaching the Jubilee March across the bridge, we decided to organize a trip. 45 of us went, along with our bishop and some leadership from our diocese, and we traveled from Atlanta to Montgomery, and then concluded in Selma this past Sunday. We worshiped at Brown Chapel AME Church, which was the church that the original marchers left from, and some returned to after they were injured across the bridge. It was a really powerful experience. There were tens of thousands of people who had traveled from across the country to participate in that march. And the preacher at Brown Chapel that morning was Brian Stevenson, who is the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, who is a civil rights attorney, but has really dedicated his life to truth-telling in our country, and in creating a series of museums in Montgomery, the Legacy Museum, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. There's also now a sculpture garden that really not only tell the story, I would say, of America's Holocaust, the unvarnished story, but have made the connections between the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, and the era of mass incarceration that we continue to have to deal with. And so it was a real honor and a real charge that he gave us when he preached on Sunday morning, when he said we seem to be living in a time right now where grace and mercy seem to be put on trial by so many of our elected officials. One thing that I want to bring up to this body from that trip, and how many have been to the Legacy Museum in Montgomery? Anybody? I mean, one thing that struck the group that went with me on that trip was surprisingly, particularly at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, that has memorial to all the lynchings that have happened in our country, Charleston County, Berkeley County are not there. And we had a lot of conversation around that. And I know that Brian Stevenson and his team of researchers have certain metrics on who gets counted and particular period of time where the counting, means that you go up on a memorial. But it strains credulity to me that Charleston County, that was such an epicenter of the transatlantic slave trade, would not have any identifiable marker of lynchings that happens in this part of the local community. There's plenty of other counties in South Carolina who are memorialized there, and there's a project at the Legacy Museum that if you've been there, I'm sure you've seen, where there are jars of earth that people have collected from areas where lynchings have taken place. And our group came back wanting to reach out to the Equal Justice Initiative to see, if they can advise us and how we might be able to engage with our city government to do that kind of research. Because I do think the point of Brian Stevenson's work is that that kind of reckoning at a local level is really important. And there's a garden at the National Museum of Peace and Justice where there are signs that have been put up all over the country to acknowledge places where lynchings have happened. And again, there's nothing like that in Charleston County. It feels like that is a reminder of continued work that needs to be done in our own locality. So I don't know exactly what the steps are, but that's something that our group came back from our trip wondering about and wondering how we might engage our local government to help do that kind of research. And, you know, a part of me would wonder, could we envision a day where maybe, because it's so formational to go on a journey like this, there could be a city-sponsored journey to some of these sites, maybe to walk that bridge together on another anniversary date after some collective work has been done around, you know, research in our own locality. Is something that I wonder. I'll just begin to close by saying that it is certainly the hope of Calvary, St. Mark's, and St. Stephen's that we continue to formalize a relationship that we are now calling Three Churches United. We are looking at doing some advocacy trainings. I've been engaging the ACLU of South Carolina because there's obviously a lot of stuff happening right now at Columbia that is impacting our locality, to see how we can work together on that. And we're looking to Juneteenth, perhaps do another service, which of course this year in Charleston is going to coincide around the 10th anniversary. So we're open and looking for opportunities where our three collective congregations can engage our city to have this conversation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Carol.
can we engage Mr. Reverend Shoemaker in a little?
No.
Can I state a
Yes.
question that's in my mind?
Yes.
Based on what he's told us. So my question is, I think I understand that the lynchings, let's just call it the memorial in Montgomery, is representative of the different places around the country where they have cataloged and memorialized lynchings. So it's not to say that lynchings have not occurred here. It's just we have not.
Correct.
We haven't officially recognized them.
What is memorialized at the Peace and Justice Memorial are the lynchings that have been able to be documented, and there are over 4,000 of them across the country. For instance, you might be familiar with the Tulsa massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Well, you go and there is a memorial there for Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you see the dates, and it's nearly all on the same day. I found a memorial for Alamance County, North Carolina, which was the county in North Carolina that I previously served as a rector before I came to Charleston. And there was only one name on that memorial. That's a very rural county of North Carolina. And I also doubt that there was only one there. But the fact that there was nothing for Charleston County, for Berkeley County, to me, felt like, well, is there work we can do with the Equal Justice Initiative to do more reckoning in our own locality with that?
Well, thank you, Adam, for sharing that. And for the Episcopal Diocese continuing to share with us the work that they're doing and the opportunities for us to follow up. Thank you a bunch.
Sure, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, so, you know, hearing from Reverend Shoemaker, I'm reminded of a moment. I was a really young activist in Charleston and getting ready to launch a program that was to take place on the east side. And somebody, the community leader that I was working with told me, you need to talk to my cousin, Dr. O. And Dr. O was a professor at that time at the college. He took me on a walking tour of the east side, and he said that before you do anything in this community, you need to understand where you're walking and what happened, what has happened here on this ground. If you want to understand the context of your work. And I remember the time him pointing at least to one tree on the east side and saying that a lynching had occurred there. And even if there's not a marker, and there should be, you know, these things live in our bones. And as the grandchild of a Holocaust survivor, I'm familiar with several studies that have shown that we literally carry this trauma from generation to generation, and we can't possibly hope to address some of the problems that we're dealing with today that are rooted in the problems that occurred 200 years ago if we don't understand the context that we're working in. And I just think it's so crucial, and I'm sure there's some good scholarship on this, and if we could get a hold of it, I can't imagine a reason why there would be resistance to putting up I mean, I can imagine why. But there shouldn't be resistance to putting up markers. I
We
really
have a
think that's-
time of open discussion.
Stand ready to be involved in any collective effort around this.
So I would hope that, as, this is an example of work that's going on in the community, that perhaps the city could play a role in, perhaps other partners can play a role in, and as we begin to think about the path forward for HARC or the path forward for the city in this area, this is the kind of thing that we need to, include on our horizon and perhaps our work agenda going forward. Thank you again, Adam,
Thank you.
for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
As he is known to do, Brandon is always contributing to the agenda. At our last meeting, we had a discussion about the legislation H 3927, generally described as an anti-DEI bill. And we've asked the Pro-Truth, South Carolina Pro-Truth Coalition to provide an update on their monitoring of that, so that we might be able to understand what's going on. Please introduce yourselves.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Letitia Vaughn, and I'm one of the co-founders of the E3 Foundation and we are the backbone organizer to the Pro-Truth South Carolina Coalition. Just a brief history, Pro-Truth was formed 3 legislative sessions ago in response to the anti-CRT conversations that were happening at the State House, and have been engaged and involved in advocacy and coalition building across the state for the last 3+ years. Our founding partners are the ACLU of South Carolina. We have Josh will introduce himself, who's been a partner in crime with us and at the State House every day monitoring what is happening. Other partners in the coalition include the Jewish Federation, LDF, the NAACP, Association of University Professors, and countless other folks from across the state who come together. In fact, we have a full coalition meeting this evening where we'll be debriefing the public on where the bill is and some actions that we're taking. So I want to turn it over to Josh, who can update you on the legislation.
Great.
Good evening. My name is Josh Melk, and I'm a lawyer with and advocacy director for the ACLU of South Carolina. It's a privilege to be here with y'all. Happy to answer questions. I'll speak briefly on the bill. I think that the codification of colorblindness is really the next Jim Crow, right? Well, this bill, the language of this bill, it was drafted so sloppily that I don't think this commission could exist. There could be no celebration or acknowledgement of Black History Month in schools, universities, political subdivisions. I really just think the architects of this movement don't want young people to understand that systems operate as designed to create racial inequities, so that they are less prepared to actually work together to address those systemic flaws. And blame individuals for the disparate outcomes that will, continue and be exacerbated by, silencing conversations about systemic flaws. I will say that our coalition has been hugely successful. I think most folks wouldn't think that we could stop, the anti-CRT legislation in South Carolina as it's passed in every state around us. And it is thanks in huge part to the massive mobilization we've been able to spark. Last week, there was a hearing on the anti-DEI bill. There were 4.5 hours of public testimony. Not a single person spoke in favor of the legislation. There will when was it? Tuesday night, long week for me. There was a DEI budget proviso. That was a lot of the same language that was actually struck from the budget, which we were not counting on that happening in the House, but thanks to a passionate speech from Representative Johnson out of Richland, that budget proviso was struck down. So yeah, I would just say it's extremely sweeping, right? It's not just higher ed, it's K-12, it's all political subdivisions, it's all agencies. As of right now, it's any party that wants to contract or subcontract with any of those entities, I think that language will get taken out of the bill because those organizations have the money and systemic privilege to kind of, take care of themselves in the legislative process. But even with that taken out, I think this bill is, in any version, is going to be extremely harmful for the state. Happy to take questions.
Questions for Josh?
Can you just tell us the process? I mean, where is it in the going forward to be voted on?
Yeah, rules and process are not always easy to come by in the South Carolina State House. So normally what happens is they take public testimony in a subcommittee.
Right.
And for whatever reason, Chairwoman Erickson didn't do that. She took it straight to the full committee. There was no vote after the last hearing, so she has promised at least one more full committee with public testimony. We believe it's going to be this Wednesday, the 19th. We're waiting to confirm. So I'm hoping that we can have the same show of force we had last time and encourage, a third hearing with public testimony. We are playing against the clock in this one. Session ends May 9th. I don't think our Senate is going to be inclined to touch this legislation. We've already had folks reaching out to senators, talking about the harms of this bill. There was an article, I think just today, saying that the fiscal impact of the bill would be $68 million. So, there is some hope that this bill will not pass this year. We do have a 2-year session. So if the House is to pass the bill this year, the Senate could take it up next year. But again, I'm hoping that the sexiness of attacking DEI will have died down by then, and we will have seen the harms at the federal level. So I'm hoping that our state lawmakers and our senators, who are known to be more reasonable than our representatives, will again have plenty of reason not to want to engage with it.
Other questions? Stephen?
Thank you. And my kids just got back to my house, so I apologize for background noise. Thanks for being with us. I was struck by some of the provisions of this law that I guess are intended to make sure that municipalities and other entities are complying with it. It required, if I'm remembering correctly, the Attorney General to certify that in the preceding calendar year, the municipalities were in compliance with the law. Has there been any discussion about, what kind of problems that might create, with the way that we were doing things before the law went into effect? Has the Attorney General's office pushed back on, how realistic it is to evaluate every county and city and other entity in South Carolina that would be covered by this to certify that they were in compliance with the law?
The Attorney General does not call me as frequently as you might think. I do think, there are provisions in there about the Attorney General also being able to go after private businesses. So I do think some of the stuff that puts a burden on the Attorney General also could get amended out of there. I will just say it was interesting. My latest update from the Municipal Association, and they have a lobbyist, is that they don't have a stance on this, which I thought was kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Also, the counties, I believe, don't have a stance, which again seems interesting to me. And again, what I've always worried about with this legislation that is so sweeping is that folks will go for carve outs for themselves when it's a ripe opportunity to stand in solidarity. But to your point, absolutely. Some of the more I think you also have to certify in advance for the upcoming year that you don't have any plans to engage in DEI before you can receive any funds. So again, even the sponsors of this bill realize they rarely read legislation, but they understand how poorly written this bill was and how unmanageable some of the provisions are. For sure.
Have we heard anything about the Chamber of Commerce at the state level or our metro region or any of the other chambers around the state?
I wish that some of our folks with power would use that power and speak out publicly. The chamber I did see speak out publicly was the Chamber of Small Businesses. They had an op-ed a few weeks back. It's my understanding that the chambers are definitely going to be against the attack on private businesses. But they, I remember when we were dealing with CRT, I went to the Charleston Chamber lobbyist and was like, can you all have some conversations behind closed doors? and they weren't willing to, and like, politics is politics. I said, y'all are next, right? Like, I'll be ready when they're coming for you. It'd be great if you could be here as, we're fighting this fight. But I think there are probably a lot of folks who are having conversations behind closed doors, so they don't risk political capital.
Right. And just, can you remind us which committee is entertaining the hearings and the vote?
The House Education and Public Works Committee.
Well, thank you, Josh. Appreciate the briefing.
Yeah, thank you all.
You guys can hang around if you want for a while. We may have some more conversation. We do have a communication from the legal department in response to an inquiry that we made that we're talking about momentarily. Yes, sir.
One question just for the viewers at home, all 3 or 4 of them. What can folks do to stay updated about this legislation and know when or if they should
Good question.
take some kind of action to push back?
Yeah, please go to the Pro Truth SC website and sign up there so you can get updates that way. Hopefully folks will come to our meetings to get updates that way as well. And then any of the member organizations, the ACLU, E3, we're always posting updates as well. And just like what folks can do right now is be reaching out to your senators. Definitely reach out to your representatives as well, but they very rarely stray from the party line on stuff like this. Whereas senators, if you have those conversations with senators now, we can stop the train before it leaves that station.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So next item on the agenda is the minutes of our February meeting. There are some proposed corrections to be made to the minutes. One on page 1 that reads chairperson's report, that should read manager's update. And I want to delete the first sentence that makes reference to council reinstating. That should come out as well.
Say that one again?
On the minutes, where it's 3, we says chairperson's comments.
Right.
Should be
Manager.
manager's report.
Right.
The first said Ms. Swinton said Park was reinstated by city council. That should come out. And she in fact updated us on the terms of membership of the commission. On page 2, it's nothing, page 3, on the second paragraph, regarding Commissioner Fry's comment, I believe it is the second sentence that reads, he said he was always an advocate for smaller government and thought that what federal government was doing concerning DEI was good. Delete the concerning DEI in consultation with Commissioner Fry. His reference was to the general downsizing of government, not specifically DEI. And in the paragraph below that, the concluding sentence, after an exchange, Commissioner Johnson left, also suggesting that we delete that. That's not necessarily relevant to action being taken by the body. And on the last page, open discussion, the second item, Commissioner Jackson asked if the meeting about the burial ground, that should read Anson Street African American Burial Ground.
Right. Thank you.
To be specific. So those are the chair's recommendations for changes. Are there other recommendations for modifications to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt as with the proposed amendments.
Move to approve as amended.
All right. Is there a second? Moved and properly seconded. All further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. We had asked Director Johnson to discuss with us the consolidated plan and a survey. There's been a change in plans and,
Rebecca Dale, who is the Deputy Director for Housing and Community Development, will do the presentation as Director Johnson had a family emergency.
so the reason, I thought this raised to, the level of, yeah, I'm giving you a chance to get there.
Okay.
Our conversations, extended conversations about affordable housing, about services to the homeless, and general concerns about community development, all kind of fall into this, the survey, and trying to understand the relationship of the survey to the master plan and the council and the city's decision-making process, and what the public should know about this seems to me to be important.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for, bumping me up on the agenda a little bit. And also you practically did my job for me in that explanation, but yeah, the consolidated plan is really a framework for affordable housing, community needs. And it's based on a lot of data analysis, and it sets the strategic direction for the next 5 years. It's a huge undertaking, and like the chair said, it addresses homelessness, it breaks down programs, it breaks down the amount of affordable housing that's needed, a variety of things. It's an enormous document. We are in the process right now of RFP to have that document developed over the next few months. And part of what is important about what I wanted to talk about tonight is the community feedback and the survey and the input from the community on the direction that we should go and how we should spend those federal dollars that we get every year, hopefully, going forward. But we have had the online survey out there to all the neighborhood associations. We've started visiting different meetings to talk about it. There's a QR code as well that people can access the survey. It has been out there for 2 weeks, I believe now, and we are going to continue to have it for a couple more weeks to ensure we get as much feedback as possible. We're getting a lot, and I'm excited about that, because often when we do reach out to the community or reach out for public comment, we don't get as much feedback as we like. So we're excited that we are getting a lot. A lot of what will go into it, we're going to use some of the Bloomberg data that they have helped us gather, which has been pretty extensive, as well as who we choose through the RFP process as the consultants to actually write it. From the consolidated plan, like I said, it spans 5 years. So to be 2025 through 2030, set those goals. Then from that, we have annual action plans, which really drill down on each goal and the steps we're going to take. And then also we have another document that reports out annually the results that are coming in. Oh my gosh. That's okay. I didn't even realize, I was just kind of waiting. But that's an overview of the consolidated plan. Everybody here in the room has a paper copy. I can send it out, but it does have a link as well as a QR code. I can get that out to the distribution. Okay. But I can entertain any questions that you may have. And like I said, this is the beginning part and us gathering feedback.
Questions from commissioners? None? Carol Jackson.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I normally look at has this been advertised in the city's newsletter? I normally read that document, not necessarily the same day, but I don't remember seeing anything.
It's
about
not, I don't believe, but it is on the Housing and Community Development website.
that. Right,
It has been put out there, and then we use neighborhood services to circulate to
Right.
the associations, as well as, I'll be going to Rosemont Neighborhood Association after this to talk to them and encourage as many people as possible to get the word out.
well, I know anecdotally that many people are subscribing to the city's, more general newsletter, so I would
Yeah, I'll
recommend
talk
that you
to,
advertise it there.
Deja, because, and I'll ask Shannon as well. Shannon was in charge of getting the survey out. She may have engaged Deja and her team. I am not positive, but I'll get back to you because that's a good point, because I believe the newsletter now is up to about 100,000. If
Yeah,
I'm not
that's-
mistaken.
It's a very wide exposure.
Yeah, so, that's if Shannon hasn't done that, that's a great idea, and I'll do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
So a question, what is the relationship with the consolidated plan to the city's master plan? Housing element?
The comprehensive plan?
Yes.
The comprehensive plan, drills down more into the zoning and land use. This really sets out programmatic goals and, based on area, like in the need for affordable housing and where that population growth is happening and things like that. It's very similar. The city plan, however, delves further into land use policies and zoning, whereas ours are more from a programmatic standpoint and services and what's needed.
And the portion of the survey that specifically speaks to the services for the unhoused, is there specific outreach to that population going on for them to participate in the survey?
There is.
What's that look like?
We have gone to the Hope Center. They have breakfast there 3 times a week. And we have solicited them. They don't have, not all of them have access to the online piece. So we are gathering via paper, where they don't. And as well as our outreach staff has information that they can pass out. And if the people they talk to on the street do not have access to a mobile phone or something, they can go to the Hope Center.
Yeah. And
Give
my,
feedback.
my last question, the third component of the survey talks about community development eligible activities. Can you describe what perhaps those dollars could be used for if there was a need?
Oh, yeah, certainly. We have a few programs where we direct our dollars, the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships or HOME, and then HACWA for housing opportunities for people living with AIDS. So we work with a variety of what we call sub-recipients. They're nonprofits. They do things like critical home repairs. It's affordable housing development for low to moderate income. We provide financing, or really gap financing for developments, and we try to look at that lower end of the spectrum, because much of the market is really addressing that higher end of the spectrum AMI wise. And then also homelessness services and programs. We give funding to the Hope Center and other agencies. For instance, I think next month, the Gateway to Housing program is going to be live, which is an amazing program that took a long time to come to fruition. And it's specifically to get the unsheltered into permanent housing, whereas it would not have been available to them before, by lowering some of the typical barriers to rental housing, like evictions, criminal records, not having a full deposit. So we gave 200,000 in home funds to that to assist with deposits and getting them into those apartments. So those are some of the things. I mean, there's a slew of eligible activities with each regulation, but those are some of the things that we put it towards.
And when is this consolidated plan due to be submitted?
we don't have the exact due date from RIDE yet, but, they're saying go down the path that we're going right now and sometime in the July timeframe.
So July of 2025.
Yes.
So, the consultant will be hired and,
Yes, we've already reviewed the RFPs and I believe we're making a selection in the next week.
and is there additional public participation in the adoption of the plan
Yes.
other than the survey?
Yes, there will be. Yeah,
And what's that look
it
like?
has to be, as it's developed, we have to solicit for public feedback as well as once the draft is finished, the first draft, it has to be made available for public comment for at least 15 days. We'll have hard copies and online copies.
Carol Jackson?
Yeah, can I just follow up in a little more detail? So you're talking about the Gateway to Housing
Mhm.
program. Is that what you're doing in partnership with Neighbors Together?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yeah, I worked closely with, Suzanne on that, and I think it's really gonna be a game changer for us because there's a lot of landlords that are participating
Right.
and encouraged, and it accepts a lot of the risk for them that they don't have to accept.
Right,
And it also
right.
offers case management.
Yeah.
With it.
Well, that would be great, Mr. Chair, if, we could put on our to be presented program scheduled. I don't know, when do you think, the early fall, or when would you be able to tell us,
Have
how
some
the,
data.
yeah,
you think?
just in, even if it's just anecdotal,
Mhm.
the
I think,
lessons learned and,
yeah, I can ask Suzanne, but I think it's gonna be a short turnaround time for data because they've been waiting
Right.
for it to go live.
right,
So there's providers, landlords, and tenants lined up, ready to go. So I think we'll have data pretty quickly.
yeah, I think that would be very, it'd be a great follow-up to the panel that we had here and whenever that
Yeah.
was in the winter.
Yeah, because,
That's fine.
Suzanne was here.
Yeah,
Yep.
Right.
I did also want to mention that, Gianna sends her regrets that she couldn't be here tonight, but she also wanted me to tell you that once we get further along in the planning and when we get the survey results, we can come back and she'd be happy to share that with you as well.
that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from commissioners? Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
a lot.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now at the manager's update. Adrian?
Thank you, Jerry. I just have a brief high-level manager's update as most of my time was taken through the HARC report. I'm gathering information for that, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. We were stating in the past meetings an annual update. This is going to be an all-inclusive 3-year report, so it'll include everything from beginning to end. As we know, we have some new council members on board. There was, in the meeting that I held with the co-chairs, there was great feedback when it came to adding an addendum towards the end, creating a component where we are asking about 2 questions. We're open to receiving more questions, but those primary 2 questions were, why is HARC important? And in your point of view, what has HARC accomplished? Also upcoming, I included the community needs survey and gave a little bit of what that blurb was. Also embedded in the document is the community development meeting from February 20th. It has a slew of information in there that is embedded, along with economic empowerment, the Small Business Expo. I sent the email for that, but that is also embedded in here. Just be mindful that you do need to have registration. So it's not just go to the event. Please make sure you register. I have that link as well, along with health disparities. The VA will be hosting a Veterans Experience Action Center This is going to be a one-on-one with claims, March 20th through the 22nd, from 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. I'm sorry, not to 3 a.m., that would be too long, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it has a variety of topics and, which will include the unsheltered, low-income housing, vocational support, and also mental health, counseling resources. I included that flyer, and I also included the contact person, which is Jonathan Kistler, who is the Suicide Prevention and Community Engagement Officer. That concludes my updates. Any questions?
So is this a report you sent out today?
I did send this out today, yes.
So, commissioners should check your email, that went out, what time this afternoon, Adrian, or this morning?
Yeah, it went out, around 2 today. I grabbed it just before I came here.
Okay.
This morning, you sent out the reminder about the expo.
Oh, yes,
So-
the expo was a separate email,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, so in terms of updates, both the expo update and then the manager's update, that includes the items that, Adrian described for us. Is there other questions for the manager?
Yeah, just real quick, Adrian, when do you need our responses to those, questions?
As soon as you can send them, because I'm gathering them. I believe Tom already sent his. I can utilize yours. So I would say by the end of next week would be great. Because the following week I have a meeting with the leads.
So the next leads meeting is when? Adrian?
On the 26th of March.
Okay, so we would like to have 26. It would be unreasonable to say, but by the 19th, we'd like to have everybody's comments, so that will give us a week to take a look at them. All right, harmonize it. So the deadline is
Wednesday, the
19th.
19th.
And maybe you explain this, where I can think about it in your memo to us today, but are we supposed to be answering these questions from our own personal point of view and experience, or expecting that our comments are gonna come together and define
No.
one way of
The
answering?
intention is for those commissioners that so choose to supply
Mhm.
responses to have that kind of, those kind of individual addendums, in terms of
So we'll be-
activity as
We'll
well
be
as.
quoted.
Yeah.
We'll be quoted.
Right,
Okay.
as well as, recording, and identifying those commissioners who, were appointed and have discontinued their participation.
Mhm.
All that information will be captured in a section, so folks can take a full look at what's happened over the 3 years in that regard.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for the manager?
And-
Yes, sir.
Will we get a chance to look at, the whole
Oh, yes.
groups before you submit it?
Yes, definitely. That's why that's what I'm pulling together now, so that I can produce a draft for you.
So again, the process that we are trying to achieve is we're looking, and I was going to kick this over to Co-Chair Bowden. We're probably looking at a presentation, the first meeting in May. All right, which means that we may be circulating and having multiple conversations during April regarding the content. As has been the case in the past 2 meetings of City Council, the Disabilities Advisory Committee has made a presentation, and the Women's Commission has made a presentation. And I anticipate us being able to do the same thing. And that presentation was made by the chairs of the group.
Good.
And so that's anticipated. So, but to answer your question, between now and the end of April, you should see a document that will represent what we intend to present as part of the meeting anticipated the first council meeting in May. And with that, I'll kick it over to the co-chair, Bowden, for any chair's comments that he might have.
All right, thank you. Sorry I'm not with y'all today. I broke my ankle after the council meeting 2 weeks ago. So I've been a tough 2 weeks with that and surgery. But I am not gonna say back up, but I am back running, I suppose. Just from a little desk that I bought on Amazon to go over me in my bed. So a couple important things. I strongly recommend that you go take a look at the community development meeting that that Adrian sent out. There's some good discussion of the rapid housing plan as it exists today, and the planning for Union Pier. The rapid housing plan, just to kind of give you all the state of where that's at. It was approved by city council at our last meeting, basically for the mayor to go say that city council has blessed it in theory, and take it around to the other counties and municipalities and try to get them on board. It's a very expensive endeavor, although I think it's cost effective. It is expensive. It's too expensive for the city to do on its own, most likely. The reality is we will need buy-in from the other cities and counties. So if you have any contacts over there, I'd encourage you to do some lobbying, and that would include Berkeley, Dorchester, Charleston County, Sheriff's Office, and then all the cities in the area. Basically with the idea that they're going to have this problem too if they don't already, right? The population that this is going to serve, moves around, depending on if they get, run off of somewhere one day, they'll, end up somewhere else, right? So, today it might be West Ashley, tomorrow it might be downtown, next day might be Summer. So, I think this and a lot of other issues, it really behooves us to work together as a region. And I applaud the mayor's office for doing that, and taking this on, because it's a big project. I truly hope that the other counties and municipalities see the value in it, and come around, as I think my colleagues on city council have. Anyway, go look at the project, go look at the YouTube, see his presentation. I think you'll be impressed with what they've got and what they're taking to the other folks that we need to buy in here. The other thing is the Union Pier planning piece of this. Not really groundbreaking, I wouldn't say. There's been and a lot of public input, let's put it that way, into this. After it got shelved last year, or whenever that was, 2023, I guess. And sort of went back to square one, the drawing board. And if you've lived in the city long enough, what the criticism was going to be: too much mass, too much density, too much height, and wanting to pare those things down. But in working with the historical groups, with the neighborhood groups, doing a lot of public outreach through the Riley Center. I think it's pretty clear what everybody wants to go there. There was a sale price was reported. I don't know if y'all saw that. It was $250 million. So it's I've sat down with the gentleman who's working with Mr. Navarro to come up with a development plan here, and present a PUD that we can ultimately approve, to control what goes here. That was the benefit of doing it the way that the city did it, is that we still get to exert quite a bit of control, make sure that people who already live here are happy, while not passing up really a once in a generation or more opportunity to develop probably some of the most expensive real estate on the East Coast, and turn it into something that works for the city, as well as the private entities that are putting the money into it. me see. It was, yeah, so I think it's a good thing that the city's agreed to move back the mayor's office has agreed to move back the presentation until May. I think it, gives everybody a chance to get some more input in there, and hopefully, allows things to cool down at the state house level. Maybe the gentleman who was talking earlier is right, and the folks in the Senate will have slightly cooler heads than the folks who've already passed that DEI bill. We'll see, but hopefully gives us a chance of really putting our best foot forward. Making sure that it's clear to council that we have tangible goals on really the most important things impacting the city, because I know I've mentioned this before, but if we're not getting at those most important things, there are certainly other issues around the city, right? But if we're not tackling housing, if we're not tackling our ability to live with water in the future, we are missing existential problems that if we don't deal with, the city will not recover from. So I just think that's important to keep in mind as we're thinking about what goes into this report. And I believe that is it for me. Let me do a quick check in my notes to make sure. Oh, go back and check out that the February 25th, I think it was, meeting of City Council, where the naming the consultant from Bloomberg talks about the housing goals, and we approved we adopted those as the city of Charleston's housing goals. It's eye-opening stuff. I mean, I can't remember the exact figure, but to create 1 unit of affordable housing costs like $500,000. When there's a lot of talk about, creating affordable housing, and we have to, right? We absolutely have to do it. And I think we've, the city, I think, has gotten pretty good, and the partners that we work with have gotten pretty good at making these things happen. And there's some really exciting things, the RAD program that y'all know about. But it's really eye-opening. It was probably about a 45-minute long presentation that is well worth your time, in considering the issues that the city has absolutely got to solve, to make it viable for anybody but the absolute wealthiest individuals to live, I would say, on the peninsula, but really it's anywhere near the peninsula, and you all know that from living here. But we've got to be serious. We've got to be taking an all of the above approach. This is not an arena where ideology works particularly well, and embrace some solutions that we might resist in other areas because they don't work there, that just happen to work in the housing area. I believe that is it for me. Thank you.
Questions for co-chair Stephen? So one of the
is one of those crucial issues, apart from housing and flooding, racial disparity in the city. My understanding was from the Avery report that came out in 2015. I don't know if there's been a report since then, that we still have incredible racial disparities in terms of outcomes and in terms of income and housing and proximity to flooding, and I mean, in every stat that we have. I know that I was thinking today about how we're called the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission, and I was just wondering if that was also one of the main goals that was going to be expressed in our.
So if you recall, and I went back and looked at the master plan, water, diversity were critical matters. If you look at the water plan, there is specific language about environmental justice impacted communities. Yeah. The challenge is in terms of the broad conversation that's going on don't talk about environmental justice, don't collect the data, right? Don't evaluate, don't move forward, right? And under the threat of perhaps not funding those things if you do that. So a big question, and a bigger question that the city probably has to address as these things kind of evolve, all right? If our water plan says we want to make certain that we do projects that impact communities that have environmental justice, right? Does that mean we get the funding?
Right.
I mean that those are the kinds of big picture questions, okay? And then what posture is the city able to take? Do you not do the project if it's a federally funded situation? And then depending upon what happens at the state level, I mean, the good news about the budget proviso seems to make the funding, because you have something that speaks to racial justice or disparity in it, less likely at this point. But
Closing
that
the
is,
gaps.
that is part of, the great unknown. Fortunately, unfortunately, our charge is to continue to raise that question to make certain that every time, each step along the way, even if it's from our perspective, a negative response, okay, that the question is being asked and answered.
And and Brandon, I certainly didn't mean to elide the racial disparity concerns here. That was sort of my point. Is, when you think about housing, there was a good article in the Post and Courier, I think the other day, that our transportation problems are actually housing problems. We've got plenty of roads if people lived where they were meant to, right? But people can't afford to live there. And so now, if you force somebody who used to be able to afford to live on the peninsula and say works in the service industry, and now they, have moved up to Somerville, we've created a lot of new problems for them, right? In addition to the cost of housing, now they need a car, with all the expenses that includes. We have, created potentially childcare issues for them. We have, on down the line, right? And so, I think when we talk about housing, when I talk about, picking out our issue that we can, make a big impact on the most important things of the day, it's got to come from why we're here. Right. And so, same deal with flooding. The water plan very clearly identified the equity issues that, exist in terms of, flooding and the impacts we can expect to see as things change over the next 25, 50 years. We've got to make sure that the city, as it's spending money, as it's looking for grants and all that sort of thing, are, focusing on those areas identified in that report, that would, kind of dovetail here with our purpose. So, I'm not saying that we, should just be some bland commission, focusing on the same things that everybody else is. Just, helping move that ball forward, making sure that, everybody is being considered, and we are, rectifying the problems that, we know exist, and that, we failed to deal with in the past in efforts to deal with these problems.
Yeah, and I hear that, and I totally I understand that these are the problems that this disparity report references, and that the conventional wisdom is that if you're addressing housing, you're addressing flooding, then you're addressing racial disparity. But that's only if I guess, and I'm thinking out loud here, but I guess that's only if you're making sure that you're addressing those problems for the people who currently live here and are keeping them from being gentrified off of the peninsula or the city, out of the city of Charleston. So I guess I'm saying it's a factor. It's a factor to think about with everything that we do. Are people being displaced? Are we solving these problems for the people who currently live here to continue to live here, and so on?
Carol?
Yeah, I thank you for bringing up, critical, questions and I think every time we have a discussion like this, I think about what, Councilmember Dudley Gregory, kept saying repeatedly as he was serving as one of the founding co-chairs of our special commission that basically used the disparities study that had been done by Avery Center at the College of Charleston and produced in 2018. And Councilmember Gregory boiled it all down to the unique qualities of, at that point, the special commission, and now our park is to never let go of the equity lens. We are the only body that the city has created officially to be aware and putting forward and shining a light on the things that, are the bread and butter existential crises, the priorities that the city has to take on. But we're the only group that looks at it from that very precious and honestly at-risk quality of equity in anything that the city uses its own resources to accomplish. So I think that's the privilege that we have, and I salute you for bringing it up, Brandon, and I hope we never lose sight of that.
So, my quick observation, regarding the rapid housing, one of the aspects that, the council did was to link the 180 place, expansion of service to the rapid housing new site. And there was supposed to be expansion of the Tecklenburg Center is being relocated.
That's not 180 place, that's the Hope Center.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Correct. The Hope Center expansion of services.
Right.
And the, rapid housing location, all right? One of the things that the council did was say, in terms of moving the concept forward, that they would be done in concert. And that's
And basically at the same site,
at the same site.
which I think is a question for us to continue to follow when we're talking about providing services to people who need them. That site is even further away than the Cunnington Avenue site where the Hope Center has been being planned to be built. And so it's even further out. How are people who are, literally homeless and moving their stuff around with them in order to find a place where they won't be moved along from any one night, carrying their stuff to this Hope Center day services location? I think that's a big question that I haven't heard answered.
I think there are a number of questions, in terms, besides the financing and the timing, right? How soon will the services be expanded? And the like, all those things are questions that we need to continue to raise, while supporting the movement toward this broader, expansion of services for, the population who are unhoused. So that's one of the things that stuck out for me in the conversations, and thank you, Stephen, for updating us on that. You may also have read, there's discussion about the Police Community Advisory Committee, CPAC, perhaps being restructured. And I've had conversations with, I used to serve on a CPAC. I've had conversations with the members who have concern about what community impact relations on policy will look like going forward. So I think that's something else that we should monitor. In like, one of the things that is due this month, is the police department's 2024 annual report, and the internal affairs report, which will give some information about progress that has been made in a number of areas. And so in order for us to have an intelligent conversation about next steps and the like, that's, I think, important. Um,
Will that be presented publicly?
So,
The annual
it's not clear from conversations that I've had, with members of CPAC. And I've reached out to, also to, council, the chair of the, Public Safety Committee, Councilman Shealy, to find out when, that conversation is going to happen, and said that we would be interested in participating and understanding what the timing is. It's perhaps possible that it could be on the agenda for the next Public Safety Committee meeting, which could be next week. But the agenda, would be posted today or tomorrow. At this point, we don't know. Okay. We do have, and our last, one of the things that you did mention, I apologize for not pumping you on this, that we had asked the legal department for a memo on impact of House Bill, potential House Bill 3927. We have received that, and we'll circulate that. With no surprise, if the bill was to pass in its current form, we would be a target, along with a number of other things that are outlined in there. I don't think it's necessary to read that into the record, but we'll circulate that as part of the minutes for the meeting. Okay.
Will it be read into the record like at a council meeting or something? I mean,
Well,
wouldn't it be our job as the Human Affairs Commission to recommend to our city council members that they fight this anti-DEI bill 3927? Should I make a resolution that we can vote on?
one way to have that discussion is for you to do that.
Okay, well, I move that as the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission, who is charged with keeping our mission going of valuing and shining a light on the equity measures that our city uses to close the disparities gaps that were acknowledged and studied and used as the foundation for why we are doing the work that we're doing as HARC. I think this bill that, as we understand it, and have now had it explained to us 2 months in a row, not only would it endanger the existence of our commission, but it would endanger the services that are currently funded in part or in whole by our state to work on the disparities that our state has acknowledged and pays out good money in order to have contractors who serve those purposes, as well as the contractors themselves in the private sector that value having a diverse and equitable workforce or a mission that they take on. So I think this is like a house of cards. If this bill would pass, a lot of what we already consider to be foundational and irrefutable would be gone and defamed and who knows what else. So I would make a motion that our commission tonight vote to ask our city council to draft a resolution or however they want to do it through their own circles of influence at the state legislature to oppose the passage of this bill, House Bill 3927.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. The memo dated March 13th from the legal department states in the fourth paragraph, potential impacts to the city of H 3927 were enacted today in its current form. The following offices, programs, committees, commissions would be eliminated or substantially altered. Park, Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Manager, Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Office, Minority and Women Advisory Committee, Minority and Women Business Enterprise Minimum Goals Procurement. The Enterprise Entrepreneur Resource Center mission is to be the catalyst for closing the inequity gap for women and minority entrepreneurs. The Commission on Women, Human Resources Impact, DEI slides as part of orientation, DEI training module, and the sexual harassment training. And they also list the Moshe Arts Festival as potentially impacted. This is not an exhaustive list, as each department will need to evaluate their programs and policies against the legislation. That gives you a sense.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, I share that with you in terms of that is the substance of the bill as currently proposed, if passed.
Which is all we have. I mean, yes, maybe it will be amended, but it might also be, cherry picked to benefit Chamber of Commerce, corporate industry, and still left to go downstream, like you just read, to anything that a local government is doing in its own name.
So the motion is to request council to oppose the city of Charleston in some fashion to oppose passage of 3927 as it's currently constituted, because of its potential impact, as described in the memo that we received from the legal department.
Yes,
Yeah, we
that's great.
referenced the memo.
Reference the memo. That's great.
Yeah, and I think you can avoid some of the opposition that we could potentially face in such a resolution if we focus especially on the fact that this bill threatens city programs that our city council and our mayor have found important enough to create and to sustain. And I mean, I think highlighting the direct threat that the legislation's language in its current form has, to your point, to all of these city programs and our city functioning, I think is a great paradigm to pursue this.
It's
language
substantive
through.
decisions that
Yeah.
the city has made, actions that they think within the public interest that will not be able to be done because of this restriction.
Right. And thank you to our legal department for doing that work to provide those corroborating details.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
All right, well, that makes sense.
I,
That makes sense.
yeah, I'll do what y'all tell me to, but
Yeah, since you don't have to carry it.
I think the word is recuse.
Yeah, okay.
then I have to fill out a form.
Yeah, actually, thank you so much. Thank you for that conversation. This is
Thank you.
important. So we're now at the point of any open issue discussion any member of the commission would like to bring forward. Of course.
I'm on a roll. So we were in Columbia. When I say we, Jewish communities from around the state. Charleston couldn't make it up because it was the day that we had the threat of like tornadoes and hail and
Oh, yeah.
whatever else they were saying was going to happen. But I'm happy to say that we were able to help advocate for the introduction of a bill that would provide grant funding for security at places of worship, any place of worship that is potentially at risk for crime or terrorism based on hatred, based on religion, and I think this is especially important in the context of everything we've been talking about. I can speak to the fact directly that federal grants that cover the same kind of risks have been frozen, and several of our local places of worship have been impacted, and several of our local places of worship, as as an extension of that comment, are recipients of grants because they are under threat of hate crime. And, you know, our Mother Emanuel is one of those places of worship that has received one of these federal grants. I don't know what their status is currently, but I would ask all of you, especially in the faith community, reach out to your local clergy and encourage them to support this. We're calling it the South Carolina Pray Safe Act, with the fingers crossed that it helps us get it across the finish line. It's age 41-45, and we plan on doing, because Charleston folks couldn't come, we plan on going up to Columbia in a couple of weeks for a formal announcement of the bill and request for support. So I'll keep you all updated about that.
Can you say the title of it again?
The South Carolina Pray Safe Act.
Pray safe. And is it already available on their legislator?
It's up on the website,
Okay.
and I'm proud to say that it has bipartisan support. I hope that it continues to have bipartisan support as it makes its journey. But we shall see.
Quick question on that, because I know that the city of Charleston, the police department will provide probably off-duty officers for security at religious services. I've seen that happen a lot. Is this something that would pay for that, or?
Yeah, so when you see off-duty Charleston Police Department officers in front of places of worship, it's because they've been hired through Extra Duty Solutions. You know, synagogues, churches, mosques will pay by the hour, and depending on the availability of officers, those rates can get even higher. But just to give you an example, in talking to the synagogues in our Jewish community, I think our synagogues are spending on average $30,000 or $40,000 a year on security personnel just to be outside during like Shabbat services and high holidays, following recommendations of experts. So, you know, it's our state's responsibility and our government's responsibility to keep us all safe. And so we hope that South Carolina will move forward with this legislation that's similar to what the federal government has done for the past however many years it's been doing this.
Other observations, concerns, expressions? Carol?
Can I just, during open discussion, thank Reverend Adam Shoemaker for coming today and giving us such I thought it was very encouraging update about how the collaboration that he and his two Episcopal congregation, the historic Black Episcopal congregations on the peninsula, have pledged their cooperation and their friendship, and it sounds like they're making huge strides of progress and living into that pledge. In terms of his challenge to the city about wanting to document and catalog the lynchings that, you know, were historically accurate, having taken place in Charleston. I remember going to the city gallery, maybe it was after COVID, I'm pretty sure, where the whole exhibit was about lynchings, and there were extensive maps. So that documentation exists, and I do think it would be great if we could go on record asking whoever, I would start with the Waterfront Gallery, because they would have the information about who put on that exhibit and how they could bring that forward to satisfy Reverend Shoemaker's request, or at least jumpstart it.
So there are several organizations, including Dr. Power's Center for Slavery at the College of Charleston, certainly the Avery Research Center, which could be asked to compile information. That's their expertise. I don't think there's that level of expertise inside the city. But once that information is collected, being able to share that with the Brian Stevens' operation to unfortunately put Charleston on the map
Yes.
in an unfortunate way
Yeah,
would be appropriate. And note that, on the positive side, there's a lot of work being done on preservation of African-American burial ground sites
right.
in the community. So the glass is partially empty and partially full. And part of our job is to make certain that we're pulling folks together who are doing the work and giving it some visibility and giving them some encouragement at the time when they're being discouraged.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the history side of things. I went up, the SC 250 group met in Pinopolis last Friday. Went up and caught them, and I chatted with the folks on our city history commission. And it's not just passive. I mean, it is active, positive engagement for minority in general, but particularly African-American stories and participation in all of the events coming up for the 250th of the founding of the nation and elsewhere. The city commission gentleman spoke, he said he'd actually seen the first application for a marker around that wasn't for an African-American marker. It was for something in Burns Downs. So there's a lot of positive support, I guess is the best way to put it. On a separate topic, I've always been interested in transportation, and I think, Jerry, you sent out the link to the thing that I think Stephen mentioned from the city about housing and transportation, how
Right.
effectively they're the same thing.
Right.
Which I saw that, well, that's what I've been saying for 40 years.
Right.
You have to be able to get to earn a living and to get the goods and services you need from where you live. And that you can either live somewhere and then work in that house and walk down the street to get stuff from a corner store, or you can live somewhere else and you can travel. If you travel, you're exposed to, say, if you're working hospitality, driving late at night, things happen. Transportation is a huge part, and I'm going to try and focus more on that because I
So
haven't been.
recall the Low Country Rapid Transit Project was one of the very first items that we discussed in the attempting to connect and be smart about what was developing there. There were some suggestions about zoning and other ordinance changes that could encourage transit-related development. That was mentioned, some of that was mentioned in the Bloomberg study. So to Carol Jackson's earlier point about raising up items that could move forward the equity agenda, those zoning ordinance changes that could encourage urban development along the corridor that might make it easier for folks becomes important. And that was an important item for us early on, and it shouldn't be lost.
No, we lost Mike Seekings, and that's his baby.
Well,
And
the
to my left, but yeah.
project continues, and one of the things that I appreciate Tom doing is pointing out the fact that because of our limited staff capacity, all right, individual commissioners have had to become resource people, all right, content experts in a sense, and that's just a piece of reality of the work that's emerged over the last year and a half. So you as a content expert in transportation, to bring that back, Carol as a content expert in terms of zoning changes, those two things come together so that in our conversations with council and the mayor, supporting the Bloomberg study implementation, that all comes together to the degree. So I think that's important. Thank you for raising that. I also wanted to point out that earlier in the year, I commented that June, July, we'll be celebrating or recognizing 10 years of the Mother Emanuel massacre. And a lot of what we're talking about, a lot of why we exist, a lot of the conversation in Charleston, all right, is centered around that. And the further we get away from that event, okay, the less we focus on the root causes, all right, and what's to be repaired. So perhaps in the next, what's it, say March. So we got 4 months to recognize, to make that link back, or perhaps part of our conversation about the necessity of the work of HARC, even if it's not HARC, but the work of HARC in the city needs to be put in the context of who we really are, all right, and where we really want to go as a community. So again, lot to think about. Tom?
This is something different that maybe we could do next meeting. And it's a follow-up to Councilman Gregory at the very end, I think, of the council meeting the other evening. And he asked the mayor, or maybe put it out there to anyone, will women be allowed at the shelter? And the mayor said no. And Councilman Gregory was going to go on. He says, and I don't think we'll have any, this is the mayor, I don't think we'll have any problem from what I've seen going on nationally. So my question is, and maybe it's a Hope Center and I just don't know, what is the plan? I haven't heard anything about women and children in the discussions thus far in terms of the homeless, what's going to be done for them. So
I think to your point, the conceptual approval that's been established, a lot of those questions remain to be answered. And that is one of them, right? Or what about women and children? What decision is going to be made and how? It may be, come down to funding and politics or legal questions. But again, that's part of the detail. The conceptual piece, as I understand it, the council approved was, let's go with the rapid housing piece. Let's go with the Hope Center being on site, and let's go make a deal with some other partners to bring this regional solution about. And so you're right to raise that as an important question.
Yeah, I think part of the context of that, at least my understanding, is that it's designed to complement things like my sister's house, where for obvious reasons, they don't want men in a battered women's shelter. It's just not a good idea.
I understand that.
So
There is no
two-
sister's house shelter. They use hotel rooms.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
the-
but
the
example, the
debate,
program,
yeah,
yeah,
the
that you
debate
do what I
about
mean. Yeah.
adequacy, how much we can do for who, and how much we're prepared to invest, is fundamental. We won't be able to resolve that around the table, but thank you for raising that point again.
Yeah, I completely understand that, but my point is, it hasn't come up in any discussions that I've followed. How are women and
If
homeless
there's not
children-
something, then it does need to be, because it's not just men. I mean, I've worked with a woman who had worked her way out of living in a tent in the woods.
Right.
So, yeah, good point.
Okay. We can go on forever, y'all. Anything else to come before the body? Thank you very much. I appreciate, the hard work, and we've got some more hard work to do over the next 6 weeks. And look forward to working. Thank you, Stephen. Hope you feel better. Bonnie,
Yeah.
thanks again. And motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion to adjourn.